Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. That was T. Martin's May This Body Be a Bridge, our good friend who wrote that song after being at Standing Rock and being inspired by one of her Palestinian activist friends and comrades. They're defending the sacred. So thank you for being with us today. We are Land Justice Futures, and we're going to be having a conversation about um, this kind of power hour shareback from folks who have been engaging in prayerful accompaniment and solidarity with the Apache Stronghold at Oak Flat. In case you've never heard of our work or you're newer to our work, we're Land Justice Futures, and we work with religious communities to center racial and ecological healing in property planning decisions. So resourcing the world we need and Indigenous and Black land stewardship and reunion, and repairing the harms of colonization. Before we get started, let's just have a little check in to see who's here. I think we've got a poll ready to come up. So who are you? We'd love to know. Are you a Catholic sister? Are you a member of one of our focus communities? Maybe you're new to Land Justice Futures. If you want to just share real quick who you are, and that would be great. And it looks like we have that second question there as well. So please go ahead and answer if you're familiar with land justice. We love to know who's in the room with us. All right. Maybe give about 10 more seconds for folks to answer. Although maybe some folks are having a hard time seeing it, looks like. Let's see. Oh, we've got 100%. Oh, we're good. All right. Let's go ahead and end the poll. All right. All right, we got a good mix of folks. About 33% are Catholic sisters, 17% are focus community members. We've got 17% who are new to Land Justice Futures. Welcome. And a lot of folks who've been participants in our stuff before. Awesome. And a lot of medium on familiarity with land justice. Good to know. Well, thank you for checking in with us. Also, it's been a while since we've done one of our webinars. And just if you want to check in the chat, how are folks arriving? These are some big, big times. How are you arriving today? We'd love to hear just a quick mood check. First thought, best thought. Just in the next, I don't know, 20 seconds. I'm arriving cautiously optimistic. That's how I'm arriving today. We've got heavy-hearted, disappointed with all that's going on, connected to purpose. We love that. Encouraged and hopeful. Grateful for being back in this group. Ooh, Heather's got grim determination. I like that. All right. Well, feel free to keep checking in. Thank you for being here. We know it's a really big time, and we don't take it for granted that you're here with us. This is it's important to be here in terms of being with the people that make us strong and make our actions clear and values aligned. It has been a bit since we have done a webinar. So I just want to make a note on the political moment that we're living in, as the last time we were hosting these conversations, we had a different administration. And so just to acknowledge that we are living in very dangerous and revealing times, experiencing communities that we are a part of or care about being targeted, the immigrant community, trans community, student protesters, basically anyone who's been vocal about human rights in the face of imperialism and genocide, or environmental protections in the face of extraction. We are seeing a true dismantling of the rights, protections, the checks and balances that people have fought for generations. However imperfectly they may exist, we are still seeing them be dismantled. And we're seeing the dismantling of public services and public institutions we rely on, scientific research, all for the profit and control of an oligarchy that wants to steal as much as they can from the earth and from the people. So we're staring into the very real possibility or existence of techno-fascism, if that's a word that we even want to face. There are lots of words we can use to describe this moment, but just want to acknowledge and not, go around it, that things can feel pretty grim right now, and just want to meet folks where they're at in that. Not gonna lie about it. And also, fascism relies on fear and isolation, on people and institutions falling in line with those in power's sense of order. And it relies on us not reaching for each other, not trusting each other, on us being afraid to speak out. And that fear is honest and in many cases warranted and appropriate, but we also need to protect ourselves and our energy and our attention. We need to protect our connections and our relationships and our joy with one another. I personally believe that a block party with our neighbors and the vibrant diversity of our communities is really good medicine against fascism. And so just want to make this note that this is really a time to buckle in with each other, lock arms, and resource ourselves with the love and strength of community so that we do not obey in advance and we can grow a just and livable and fair future where we are. And in terms of our work for land justice, in some ways our work becomes even clearer. We live in a place where private property is pretty reified. It's one of the most protected things that there are. And so to be organizing with each other to transition towards a regenerative economy through the decisions we make about land, to transition towards a repaired community of creation through our decisions about land, we can use this to our advantage to set the direction of the future. What happens on land and with our communities really sets the course. And so if we can repair the harms done to each other and the land and actually forge an unwavering solidarity, we will win. There are more of us. So that's my pep talk for this moment. I hope you receive it well. It's given in sincere hope that it gives you something you need. And we've got a lot more coming in the year ahead. So our team is really checking in with our movement partners and folks from the Mother House Starter Series, and just folks we work with on the ground as well in the places that we work for land justice. And we've got a lot that is happening in terms of what we're cooking for the year ahead. So please stay tuned. We haven't gone anywhere. We're just buckling in for the ride and finding the right way forward with you all. So we're here to talk about Oak Flat. And some folks here might not be familiar with it. So we're going to actually start with a little bit of a video that helps you all get a little bit familiar with these lands and the Apache Stronghold that is fighting to protect it. As public lands come under threat, we have a responsibility to them and to the indigenous people trying to protect them, because they're doing that not just for their own communities, but for all of us. So we're going to share this video. In it, you'll see some of the leaders of the Apache Stronghold, Wensler Nosy and his granddaughter, Naylin. So thank you, Denise, for playing.
This is Oak Flat, a 6.5 square mile plot of land in Arizona's Tonto National Forest. The land is sacred to the Western Apache people. To you, it may look like any other Arizona desert, but to the Apache people, it's the birthplace of their religion. And then there's Resolution Copper, a project of the world's second largest mining corporation. To them, it's something entirely different, a massive copper deposit, and the opportunity to make lots and lots of money.
A mining giant is finishing up plans to dig under part of the area named Oak Flat.
This is where God touched the world. This is where a deity resides.
This copper mine would essentially destroy Oak Flat and some of the surrounding areas.
Oak Flat is really the cornerstone of our religion.
In the late 19th century, the Apache were driven away from Oak Flat and forced to live on the nearby San Carlos Reservation. But they still go back to learn about their history, live off the land, and practice their religious beliefs.
When my mother and my father would take us here as a little girl, we would get off the truck and we would pray. We get this teaching of understanding that everything is living, that Yosin has given life to it, and we have to respect it. All I knew as a little kid, was I would come here and I could be free. Our freedom to be Apache, our freedom to have our religion was here.
Ancient ceremonies hidden from outsiders are a part of this geocentric religion. One ceremony where filming is forbidden is called a sunrise ceremony.
The sunrise ceremony is a coming of age ceremony when a girl in our community has her first menstrual. It is within that year she has her coming of age ceremony.
Over the course of 3 days, the community comes together to sing songs and dance for hours on end. Angelic spirits called Gon, Apache believe they live in nearby Gon Canyon, possess the bodies of the crown dancers and dance with the girl.
And so you have these men who wear these masks and these crowns, and when they wear it, they're no longer the man that they were, that we call them. They're the Gon, they're the spirit. And we see them as this higher being. And they dance in the ceremony, and the girls will dance behind them, in a sense following their lead.
On the morning of the third day, the girl is covered in white clay.
And when they paint her white, it symbolizes that she's coming into this womanhood, into this new world. Her eyes are closed and it's covered with paint. But when the godmother opens her eyes and wipes away the paint, she is no longer looking at the world as a little girl. She's looking at the world as a simkleshe, as the first woman. And that's her first day of being reborn. And so this is a whole celebration in our community about the next generation, about us being able to give life. And it's amazing to see that one individual, one girl having her menstrual is being celebrated by her entire family and friends and community because she can carry such life within her. I'm 22 years old and I haven't had a child yet. And I've always wanted to have a kid. And when I come here, I almost feel rushed, like I should have a child now because I would at least want my child to experience the land, because that's my worry is that I don't have a kid. And so I should have one so that they can at least experience and breathe in the air because, like I said, it's sacred. We are surrounded by sacredness by standing here, and it's going to be gone forever.
Oak Flat was protected by the federal government starting in 1955.
Thank you, Denise. I always get emotional at that part. We have the link for that video. You can continue watching more of it on your own time, but just wanted to make sure that folks had a sense of this place and the people who are fighting to protect it. As the video continues, it explains more about how Oak Flat was promised to always be protected by the U.S. government, first by treaty and then by President Eisenhower. And after copper was discovered just a few decades ago, it quickly came under threat. And a land transfer was snuck into a must-pass defense spending bill in order to transition the land to Resolution Copper, an Australian-owned mining company. And so we're going to talk more about the current status of Oak Flat. But right now, I'm going to welcome our guests, folks who've been doing accompaniment work with the Apache Stronghold for a number of years. For Carol, I think close to a decade. And Tim, you've been part of this work for years. And Susan and I had the great privilege and honor of joining the Apache Stronghold and you all for the last prayer run in February from San Carlos Apache Reservation to Oak Flat. And so we are gathered here to share a little bit of that experience with you and also just the current call to stand with the Apache Stronghold in their fight. So first, welcome. Thank you all for being here. Susan is a member of the Loretto community, who's one of our focus communities for Land Justice Futures. And we have Carol Rose and Tim, who are part of the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery and COFA, which they can share a little bit more about. But before we get too much into it, can you share a little bit, Carol and Tim, about any important additional context about the current fight for Oak Flat, where things stand with this administration? And I'll pass it to
Yeah.
you.
So to get to the current time, you have to go way, way back, which Naylene and Wensler did a bit in that video. This is sacred from time immemorial. This place. The spring behind me is where that white clay is washed off the young woman. There is in the desert perennial water that is threatened. The entire place, if the mine happens, would become a great cavernous hole. The entire watershed or entire gathering of water under the land would be drained completely. Apache Stronghold, in their struggle, first uses prayer and gathers people in such an incredibly generous way as they believe that it is time to reweave the one circle that was broken by colonization and capitalism and greed. And so they welcome us back in to that one circle to be part of the healing and protection of this sacred place. There is right now a federal case that Apache Stronghold has brought for their religious freedom. It is under consideration by the Supreme Court, and we do not know yet whether the Supreme Court will take the case or not. Tim, you want to take it from there?
Sure. Thanks to Tess in the chat for making the connection with Rio Tinto. So the video, if you get to watch the whole thing, does make the connection with Resolution Copper, which is jointly owned by 60% by Rio Tinto and 40% by BHP. For those of you who don't know, Rio Tinto is I think it's the largest mining company in the world that's done tremendous damage to indigenous sites in West Papua and Papua New Guinea, as described in the chat, and also in Australia. Just within the last decade, destroyed some very ancient indigenous caves there. And so this is a struggle that makes connections all over the world. And that's been, I think a big part of Apache Stronghold's work is building solidarity with other indigenous groups who are fighting destruction of their sacred sites. One group that's regularly present is fighting a lithium mine in Thacker Pass in Nevada. And a lot of these relationships are built and maintained through the convoys that Apache Stronghold has done throughout the court cases. So 2 years ago, going from Oak Flat to Pasadena in Southern California around the hearing in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then this past summer, 6-week journey to the Supreme Court to file that court case that Carol mentioned, and along the way stopping at many different indigenous communities, and then on the eastern half of the U.S., stopping at a lot of churches to share the story and to make connections. So that's a really important part of how Apache Stronghold uses prayer and movement to build connections.
Yeah, thank you for naming the Rio Tinto connection, as well as, naming that this is a religious freedom case. They're making the case that their religious freedom will be forever impacted if this land transition moves forward. And I think it feels really powerful to name that, given, that the premise of religious superiority is really at the root of colonization writ large, of Christian supremacy. And so, by bringing this case forward, they're really forcing the US government to say that it's not just Christian religious freedom that they're willing to uphold, but actually indigenous religion that they're willing to protect and uphold as well. And that is, deeply and inextricably connected with the land, and the health of the land and their relationship to the land. We have, a good number of sisters and people of faith on this call. I'm curious if you can share a little bit, just a tiny bit, about the relationship between Mount Graham and Oak Flat and the Vatican. There's a little bit of backstory here that leads up to this current fight for Oak Flat.
Yeah, so in the late 80s, the University of Arizona and a coalition of others um, pushed to a different Apache sacred site, Mount Graham, to pass a law to exempt themselves from environmental impact statements and other things while they constructed 3 telescopes on that mountain. And so that was a fight that was led by by environmental groups, and Apache folks joined in. Um, I think that, Amy, you can share some of the links in the chat for more background on this. And one of the observatories was a Vatican observatory. So there was a long campaign that we can't go into that was somewhat successful in stopping more. They were initially hoping to have 30 telescopes, separate installations there, and there's only 3 currently there. But one of the pieces that, one of the first times I was at Oak Flat in 2023, Juan Cernosi, one of the Apache Stronghold leaders, handed me this essay called Personal Reflections upon the Nature of the Sacred in the Context of the Mount Graham International Observatory, written May 25, 1992 by Father George V. Coyne, who was the director of the Vatican Observatory. I've sent Sarah the whole essay, but Cultural Survival excerpts it. I'm just going to read this. Nature and the earth are just there, blah, and there will be a time when they are not there. Further, it is precisely the failure to make the distinctions I mentioned above, nature, earth, cultures, human beings, that has created a kind of environmentalism and a religiosity to which I cannot subscribe and which must be suppressed with all the force that we can muster. And so that message still is deeply painful for Apache Stronghold leadership. And so as we are building relationships and as we are welcomed into this space as Christians and people of other traditions connected to prayer, it's particularly powerful to recognize how Apache Stronghold is doing that in the context of very difficult relationships. And so I think through our action together, there is also healing that has been possible, and not just healing, but building something new together.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing some of that context. And I think it's just worth noting how the quote from that father, George Coyne, he was the Jesuit Vatican representative and director of the observatory, just how that view of nature as dead and insignificant like just rings through that quote and feels um so at odds with so many people's spirituality within the church, um, and especially with the communities that we work with, and not to mention just how explicit that message that he had is really rooting for an extermination of indigenous religious practice, and seeing it as inferior. And so I think it's just worth noting that and noting like that's not the faith that I know of sisters or the people that we work with, and it's certainly not the practice that I want to be aligned with. Um, One thing that we had heard from Wensler during we'll get more into the prayer run in a minute, but if you could speak a little bit to this journey or this transition between how churches and various denominations were engaging with the Apache stronghold during the Mount Graham fight, and now what this stronghold has brought together in terms of a coalition, including a coalition of faith, to fight for Oak Flat, for saving Oak Flat. If you could just briefly speak to that.
I can say one thing and then Carol, hand it over to you. During the fight around Mount Graham, Wenzel tells a story that I won't go into the details of, but there was a Catholic woman from Europe who was there, went to the Catholic Church on the reservation and experienced a really dramatic clash of her experience of Catholicism with what she experienced on the reservation, to the point that as I understand the story from Wensler, the priests at the Catholic Church on the reservation physically forced her to leave the church in a really painful way. So that this Apache stronghold and Apache folks who have been involved in the struggle have always recognized there's people in the church who are working with them and understand the sacred to be compatible and connected with the way they view it. So Carol, I'll hand it over to you for the more recent connection.
Like I said, the Apache stronghold, out of that experience of partial failure, they did protect a great deal of Mount Graham. They protected some of the old growth forest that was destroyed, and some of it was destroyed by the installation of those huge, huge facilities. But one of the learnings they took out of that context was we cannot just fight this on environmental laws. We need to fight it from our hearts, because this is our faith, this is our spirituality, this is our religion. And so with Oak Flat being threatened, they have centered both their religion and asked us to center our faith as well. And they have called in all people of prayer to back this fight for Oak Flat. So praying is their first ask. And they've also been gathering, we've been gathering, and they've been gathering amicus briefs, which are formal legal statements in favor of their federal case. And there are hundreds of churches. All right, I'm going to miss the title. The Council of Bishops, Catholic bishops in the United States, has signed an amicus brief for this. The University of Notre Dame has backed them in some beautiful ways. And we pray that we will need more amicus briefs because the Supreme Court will take on the case. But in both prayerful accompaniment, and the organizing of religious groups, especially churches, we're seeking not only to protect Oak Flat, but also to repair the harm of colonization and repair the harm it has done on us Christians, instilling ideas of superiority. And I think there's also ideas of of we can't do anything because we're too small in this massive structure system. And those things get repaired within us also when we spend time with the land and we and in solidarity.
Yeah, I remember Wensler mentioning that, you know, in this current legal battle, this one for Oak Flat, that their opposition, the mining companies and all of that, like, we're having trouble finding a single church to support their case, which feels like a really needed shift, or the beginning, perhaps the bare beginning of a shift towards right relationship, and one that we need to encourage and continue to strengthen. So for folks who are part of religious communities or part of churches, or of any community of faith, the ask may come to you once we hear about whether this Supreme Court case is, whether it's going to happen. The ask may come into your inbox to organize your church, your faith community, your congregation, to join the Apache Stronghold in their legal case by submitting or joining an amicus brief. So I'm just going to plug that now. Be ready for it. And I guess, Susan, I'd love to weave you in as well. One thing that was really clear on this prayer run, and we'll show a little bit of, we'll have a little bit of slideshow to give people an idea of what this prayer run was like. But one thing that really struck me was this very earnest and sincere invitation from Apache leadership to be of one prayer, one drum, to reweave the circle, and really the message of, like, this is for everyone. This is not just for the Apache. This is for all of us, because there has been such deep damage done to our world and to ourselves and our communities and our connections with one each other that we need to repair. So I don't know, Susan, do you want to share any of your reflections on just this experience, and like what moved you by being there?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So I'm a relative newcomer to this. This was my first experience being there at Oak Flat. And the opportunities to share about it help deepen the experience. So I'm grateful for this. As I was thinking about it, I think I'll try to invite you in to one experience that for me just went straight into my heart. And that was it was the first morning of the run. So they had started running the night before, but it was my first seeing the runners. And I was in the parking lot of the starting point. And actually, I would like to invite you, maybe you want to close your eyes and just picture with me what I saw. So picture a teenage Apache girl dressed in black shorts and a white shirt, her long hair pulled back behind her. She's alone on the road, just striding down the road, head held high, the staff with the sacred eagle feather held high. And I saw her, and the tears just began to flow. And so I wonder if you can see her and if you can sense the power of her dignity. And as I invite us back to the circle, just for some of my own reflections, I think I was moved so deeply because she, for me, was living proof that the domination system with all their weapons and money and capacity to inflict suffering, cannot ultimately win, cannot destroy the root of life. And it reminded me of a sacred text from the Maya. You can yank off our leaves, you can cut off our branches and burn our trunk, but you cannot destroy our roots. And that's what I experienced at Oak Flats. It was the resurgence of the roots of spirituality, the roots of a culture, the power of dignity.
Thank you for that, Susan. Yeah, I share your awe and just, yeah, kind of speechless awe and humility in the face of that kind of witness. Seeing people run with the staff, with a caravan of trucks and cars behind them, headlights flashing forward under the night sky, you know, stars blazing through the desert, and seeing these Apache youth carry the future forward was just it was just incredible, and it was incredibly hopeful, and I knew in that moment I want to support this. I want to channel the powers that I have, whatever they are, towards supporting this fight. And I guess with that, I'd love if each of you could share a little bit about why you're in this fight, why you said yes to this kind of prayerful accompaniment, this kind of solidarity. One thing that I love to think of solidarity as really entanglement, such that someone else's struggle is actually not just their struggle, it's yours too, because it impacts you personally. Um, and you can't separate from it. It can't become, oh, that's too bad. It's in you. And so I guess I'd love to hear a little bit more from each of you about why you said yes, and kind of how you became more committed to this.
Yeah. So I have, from young adulthood, been in that tangle. But about a decade ago, I moved to Arizona, and I had learned already through engagement and entanglement, solidarity entanglement with Indigenous people elsewhere, that when I need to be in touch with the Indigenous people where I live, I need to figure out what they're fighting for and how to follow their lead and how to get in there in relationship. And wow, the people in Arizona were scooshed aside and thrown into the most harsh parts of the desert, but they are not gone. They are right here. So I've never lived someplace where the Indigenous presence is so active and lively. And it did not take me long to find Apache Stronghold and to visit Oak Flat and to understand that in addition to other struggles, the border wall and other things, this is a place that calls me. And this is a movement, a people who want me in there with them, who know what to do with my energy to fold it into their fight for what is right and for the earth and for us all. So I dove in gradually at first and then head over heels. And all the time aware that while being a neighbor is what got me into this particular fight this particular place of sacred presence of the indwelling of angels, it's also claimed by the federal government. It is national forest land. If you live in this country, if you benefit from the United States government's powers in any way, you are as responsible for Oak Flat as I am as a neighbor. As I have visited Oak Flat more frequently and come to know Apache Stronghold better, the place itself has been acting like my spiritual director. It asks me wise questions. It makes me wrestle with my own hubris. It renews me. God renews me through that place. And so I would invite you into that space if you have opportunity. And by now, Apache Stronghold is like family with me. So there's no getting out. And there's deep invitation to organize because that's who I am. So I started inviting my friends and my church and my denomination to pray, and trusting that organizing will follow prayer. And it will follow, if organizing follows prayer, it will go deep. And it has.
Should I jump in here, Sarah? Yeah, so I would echo a lot of what Carol said. Carol is my supervisor at Community Peacemaker Teams for 6 years, and we began to work together in the coalition to dismantle the doctrine of discovery. And Carol really invited me in more deeply about 2.5 years ago into the work with Oak Flat. And like Carol, for me, it connects with decades of work around things like watershed discipleship, the concepts from Ched Myers and Elaine Enns that's been really key to me. Like, how do I, as a Christian, root more deeply in the place where I live, not just with the plants and animals, the non-human world, but with the indigenous people? Learning to look at my own tradition through that lens of decolonization and recovery of our relationship with Mother Earth. It was very moving for me to hear T. Martin's song at the beginning. T and I were part of the Carnival Day Resistance in 2018 that was really wrestling with this. And just on Sunday, I preached on looking at the parallels between the literal way that the Oak Flat Run starts at Old San Carlos, this concentration camp, a site of deep pain for Apache folks, and goes to their sacred site at Oak Flat. And the way that in the first chapter of Mark, John the Baptist movement, right at Jesus' baptism, talks about how people left Jerusalem, a site of a lot of pain for the Jewish folks, and went to the Jordan River, which we can understand as a threshold into the wilderness. And then Jesus spends these 40 days reconnecting with Mother Earth. And when Apache Stronghold talks about how Jesus came to those of us who lost our connection with Mother Earth, that's for me a lifelong journey. And I think Laura Feldman in the chat said it well, because I know the indigenous people struggle to stay on their lands, and I would say recover their relationship with and deepen their relationship with Mother Earth is the only way the earth will be healed. So beautifully said, Laura. Thank you.
When I think of my own involvement, I guess Carol is a common denominator. Carol and I are friends. So I've known about Oak Flat for a long time. So that would be one layer. A little bit deeper layer of my involvement would be that Earth is my teacher. And I've been active in protecting land in Kentucky for many years. And if I go another layer deeper, so I lived in Central America for a long time, about 20 years. And I came back to the US partially because I sensed that I really needed to figure out how to live my values in my own home culture. it's different to accompany people other places, but to come back here and really own my own country, my own culture, and myself within that seemed really important. I was listening the other day to an interview of Gabor Mate. Probably many of you are familiar with him, a Holocaust survivor, trauma expert. And he said something that really resonated with me. He said that if people don't look at their own history of domination, they won't see it in other places. So when I think of our nation's support, giving billions of dollars to support Israel's genocide of Palestinians, I mean, that's a cycle of harm that's rooted in the fact that we have not owned our own responsibility in the genocide of Native Americans. So for me, this isn't just kind of about owning history. It's seeing how the cycles are manifesting now in government policies and and in myself. And it isn't lost on me that as people like myself who have benefited from our government policies are now like, what's going on? It's failing. It's doing harm. And we thought basically maybe some mistakes, but it was basically set up for good. It's not lost on me that the people we're with at Oak Flat, the system has never worked for them. And so as things fall apart, they're the ones that I'm turning to for kind of learning and wisdom, and whatever support I can offer, I want to offer that as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all for sharing that. Yeah, I think this is perhaps a good point to weave in some connections with just like the work that calls to us more broadly in this moment around solidarity with Indigenous peoples, around a just transition, around repairing the harms of enslavement and colonization, and capitalism that has really been destroying or attempting to destroy the fabric of life. Um, Susan, you've been a part of Land Justice Futures since we started, and you're a member of one of our focus communities that is focused on, doing land justice with the land that you currently steward or own. You've been part of the Mother House Starter Series for Mother Law and Complicit No More, which is an initiative that we've been developing in partnership with a number of Indigenous elders and specifically Haudenosaunee elders. And I'm curious if you want to share any connections that you're making, because like I hear it in your voice around like we need to remove our consent from this domination order. We need to heal the harm done that was done, but through that project, through those projects, there are many of them. And we need to find something else. And so I'm curious if you want to share anything that came up for you as we were at Oak Flat, that feels connected to some of this work we've already been doing together.
Yeah. Yeah. The word that comes to my mind is the word seeing. My experience is that the land justice futures work is helping us to see both the cycles of harm and where they've come from and where they're going, as well as the cycles of life and where they're to be found as spring and source for all of us. And maybe it's because, 10 of the years I was in Latin America, I was in El Salvador during the Civil War. And so the experience there, I realized that a revolution is not actually revolutionary unless it transforms our perceptions of power. And Sarah, you and the Land Justice Futures team, you're revolutionary because you are challenging us to see and experience power differently. You know, systems of domination, they're blinded by their own arrogance and perceived power. I mean, they're really tunnel, narrow vision. Like, I mean, I can, it's like, how can Israel and US not see that their efforts to totally eradicate Hamas is just creating another generation of resistance fighters? You know, it's like, how can they not see that? It's because dominating power is blind. And so any occasions that help us actually see are part of a transformation process. And it's not just, that's what I love, even about your introduction, Sarah. It's not just about the harm. It's also fostering the life. And maybe just one personal awareness I came to see through the Mother Law and Complicit No More was the awareness that if we go back far enough, we all come from indigenous people, all of us. And it helps me kind of feel like there's a solidarity or what you describe as entanglements from the roots. It's not just me kind of do-gooder white person trying to build a bridge. It's about really all of us coming down to our roots so that that life can manifest in a new and different way. And I find myself so grateful for the indigenous people who have maintained the lineage of their wisdom through great suffering. They've maintained that wisdom so that it's available to all of us now. And I feel like we really need that.
Mm. Mm. Thank you, Susan. When you're talking about power and like it coming from the roots, you know, it makes me think of Pat McCabe, who I think someone just mentioned Pat McCabe in the chat, who's one of our advisors for all of this work. Yeah, when I shared with her that we were at Oak Flat, she was deeply moved, and she sees these connections really clearly. You know, we need to find and relocate ourselves and realign ourselves with true power, with the true authority, which is Mother Earth, and which is the life force that flows through her. And you know, as she says, we need to stand with her full authority. And I feel like that is something that I saw when I watched the Apache women running through the night with the prayer staff. I saw that authority. I felt it. And that's what I feel with Mama Bear when we're with her. And she's speaking about mother law. So, you know, I think the invitation is there to find that power, and it also requires us to reject the false power and remove our consent from the ways in which we are entangled with it and maybe want to be entangled somewhere else. And so thank you for sharing some of that. I do want to leave some time for us to talk about next steps. We might go a couple minutes over if I'm being realistic here. I'm wondering if we can share a little bit of some of the next steps that Apache Stronghold has explicitly requested, and then maybe we can give a little slideshow at the end about that gives a little bit of more of a look into like what accompaniment with Oak Flat in person can look like. So Denise, if you could pull up some of the slides. Thank you. Look at you just being right there. The first ask from Apache Stronghold is to join them in prayer. One thing you can do is you can print out, and we will send out some photos. You can print out a photo of Oak Flat. You can print out photos of the Apache Stronghold, the leadership there, the folks who are leading this fight. And you can print out a picture of the Supreme Court justices if you like, and put them on your altar and pray for them every day. That's something that Carol and Tim suggested and is aligned with their asks. You can also join the amicus briefs for the Supreme Court case if and when it moves forward. So maybe get started with thinking about who you could organize, who you could ask, to get ready for that, because the turnaround time is probably going to be pretty brief for getting those ready to go. Also, you can join in an upcoming prayer run, or if Apache Stronghold is journeying to DC, one of those cross-country journeys, and support it with food, with prayer, with your presence, logistics. Oh yeah, thank you. Or maybe Ariel or Ariel. 5 of the 9 Supreme Court justices are Catholic. Also, for those people out there who are like, should I organize my Catholic church? Should I organize my, religious communities? Yes, yes, yes. This is needed now. But that last one that I just mentioned, an upcoming prayer run is happening likely this July. It'll be slightly different than the one that we were describing because it's a run to Mount Graham. And will be likely July 18th through the 21st, and we can share more about that. Denise, if you could scroll back and we could just end with some pictures of not all the way back, but okay, that's great. Tim, do you want to give us a little share in the last, I don't know, 3 minutes or so?
Yeah, if you want to go forward, that's Oak Flat, a view, and go ahead and go forward again. This gives you a sense of where it's at, and keep on moving forward. And a zoom in. I want to go all the way forward to the run photo, so a couple more forward. And so this is where we started, the monument in Old San Carlos that tells the story of displacement. This is where the U.S. government tried to force Geronimo to stay during the attempted genocide of the Apache folks. Go forward. So we start the run there. As Sarah was saying, it starts in the evening. So that's in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. And then over Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday, we go through there. Go ahead, go to the next one. This is the scene that a similar scene to the one Susan described. It's a relay, so each runner will run for much of the run will run for a quarter to half a mile. Go forward. And then we'll have these breaks where everyone's gathered, those who are running and those who are supporting, for times of prayer and sharing and messages from Apache Stronghold leadership. Go forward. These are some of Apache spiritual leaders and elder women in the front there who are part of the walk through the towns of Globe and Miami, which are historic mining towns, and also a site of a lot of explicit racism and segregation, targeting indigenous folks, like as recently as the 70s, saying you can't come to no Indians served in the front. So very explicit racism and segregation. And this one is another view as we approach Gahan Canyon. You can see the trucks of runners behind as a person runs the staff. Go forward. This is Wenser speaking once we got to Oak Flat. Go forward. One of the Pomo dancers from Northern California who danced during our time together on Saturday. Go forward. And that's back to our beginning. Thank you.
So we can end those slides, and just as you can see, this is a fight that is bringing together folks from very different backgrounds. Different tribal nations have been joining in this fight. Folks from within Arizona and beyond Arizona. Lots of folks from like the climbing community. It really is a circle that is trying to reweave us together. And I just want to name like for me personally, with the work that we do with Land Justice Futures, um, it felt like an incredible example of spiritual and moral leadership for a world in which many worlds can exist, as the Zapatistas would say. And really that inclusivity really being something that was modeled throughout the prayer run, and really I think points the way forward in terms of how some of these fights can be won. So I would love to ask any closing words from either of you before I kick it over to Carol for some prayer to close us out. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So let's
Susan.
pray, and don't be intimidated by the word run. There's lots of space for those of us who aren't up to that particular external activity. Oh, we pray for the sacred land of Oak Flat, for the ancestors' hawks who watch over us, for the holy ancient trees that keep their arms open for us, for the soothing leaves that provide medicine for us, for the glistening waters that provide fresh life for us, for the canyons and the angels on assignment in that place that maintain centuries of healing prayer for us all. And we pray for Resolution Copper to stop its attack and show love and compassion. We pray for the Supreme Court, that they may do what is right and protect the earth, even if it's for their own self-interest. Let them do what is right and follow with their hearts eventually. We pray for the sacred land of Oak Flat. Amen.